Welcome to the Run for God Run Club, where you will find God in a runner's space.
Welcome to the Run for God Run Club. This is your one stop each week to be motivated and inspired to get off the couch and onto the running trail, where you can, in turn, inspire others to do the same. Let's learn, laugh, and leap into running together, giving God the glory for what we are able to do in His name. Amen. It is that time for the Run for God podcast. Now, with me this week, normally you'd see Mitchell over here, but filling in extremely last second is the better side of the Mitchell clan, Lane Hollis.
Exactly.
How you doing, Lane?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Let's talk about our sponsor for the day, Hank's Carpet and Flooring. Hank's Carpet and Flooring is your one-stop for all your flooring needs. Hank's stocks a huge selection of name-brand flooring, carpet, luxury vinyl plank, waterproof flooring, and the exclusive Lola Pate area rug collection. Voted North Georgia's best of the best 8 straight years and People's Choice winner for the past 2 years. Great flooring, great prices. Why shop anywhere else? Visit Hank's Carpet and Flooring and Giant Showroom or hankscarpet.com for red-hot deals. I think I just saw Hank's Carpet was actually listed as best of the best in Chattanooga from the Chattanooga newspaper too. So
Really?
They're not only the best in Dalton, they're the best in Chattanooga as well.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. We had a Facebook post from this past week. Debbie Bunch Conway says this: "Let me tell you about my Jesus. Today was race day. I woke up at 3-something with a headache and began praying for myself and everyone else running today. I tried to go back to sleep but couldn't. By the time my husband woke up, my headache was worse and I was nauseous. I tried Tylenol and got my coffee, but wasn't able to drink much before I began vomiting. Not only had I made my mind up not to run, I wasn't even sure if I could go watch him because my head was swimming so bad. He reassured me that God had everything under control. I drank a Coke Zero, which I never do before a race, and began to feel a little better. We grabbed our stuff and headed to the race with me still doubting my ability to run. By the time the race began, I wasn't 100%, but I felt a lot better. The first song on my playlist was Run Devil Run. I ran way too fast for the first 2 miles. The first one was faster than my time trial earlier this weekend. The second just barely over it. I stopped twice for bathroom breaks and once to put Band-Aids on my foot. The last mile or so was uphill. But God. Not only did I finish this race I almost didn't show up for, I have a new PR. Thank you, Run for God family, for your post and encouragement to help keep me motivated." Man, you just never know, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you have the best days on the days you feel the worst. It's crazy. And I've been there. I remember when I ran my fastest marathon, on the way there, we stopped at the doctor's office on the way. I felt so bad that I went by the doctor's office to get some medication.
Really?
On the way, yeah. Yep. And I thought, I don't know if I should try this, but I've paid for it. It's kind of a vacation thing. It was in Myrtle Beach.
I was about to say, was that the Myrtle Beach Marathon? Yeah. Is that the one did you win that one?
Yeah. It was crazy. I had no expectation to run really well there, and then everything just came together on race day.
That is crazy. I knew you had won the Myrtle Beach Marathon. I didn't know you were in the doctor's office before.
Yeah. So you just never know, right?
Yeah.
Of course, you drank this Coke Zero. I'm sure that some people, when they heard that,
I don't know how in the world that happened. That's pretty crazy.
In ultra endurance races, a lot of times flat Coke is a thing.
Yeah,
right?
I do like. I've been on several 4 or 5 hour bike rides, and that's one of my favorite things. Is flat Coke.
For sure. That's pretty cool story though. And then the idea that all this encouragement led to that success is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So last week we had a trivia question, and this was a very simple trivia question, and this is what it was. Who holds the Olympic record in the marathon? And then I also followed that by saying, look at this guy's life, because it was tragic and amazing at the same time. Have you ever heard of Sammy Wanjiru?
I have. I know him very well, but not because of this trivia question. I didn't even know that he held the Olympic record. I had just known about like his story from this book that you've read, and I've read multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
But
How bad do you want it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Sammy Wanjiru still holds the record that was set in Beijing in 2008. He ran 2:06:32 on a day that was hot, it was humid. There was no way anybody should have run 2:06:32 that day, but he did, all by himself. He was the youngest gold medal winner since 1932. And this is interesting, 2008 was the first Kenyan to win the marathon.
I was about to say, I was looking at that. That seems very hard to believe.
Isn't that hard to believe?
Very hard to believe.
He was the first Kenyan to win it, for sure. But Sammy had he was a junior record holder in the 10K. I can't remember what his time was. It was crazy fast. He set records in the half marathon 3 times. Maybe from a medal standpoint, the most impressive runner that ever lived.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable. You mentioned the book, How Bad Do You Want It? It tells a story in there, and pull up the video from the Chicago Marathon from 2010, and he's running against Kebede and Lalisa, and they drop Lalisa, and then it's like 2 heavyweight fighters, and they're just going back and forth, and it's like one of them surges, and then the other one, kind of drops one, and then he comes back, and they just go back and forth, and it's unbelievable. When you know the backstory of this, too, it makes it more impressive, because just watching the video is impressive. But when you know that Sammy went into this thing highly undertrained, that he suffered so much before that he missed weeks of training, that he was overweight when he began his training, just all sorts of crazy stuff. There was no way he could win this thing, but he did. But part of that same thing that made him so tough mentally as a runner also gave him many other problems as a runner. And that's why I say his life is triumphant and tragic at the same time. Sammy died at the age of 24. And he died when he fell from a balcony. The circumstances of that were just tragic. It was one of those things where he was doing stuff he shouldn't have been doing, and he wound up hurting himself. Well, killing himself accidentally. They say accidentally. Some people say he did it on purpose. It seems more accidental. But anyway, he was an extreme guy, and because of that, he did stuff like he had a drinking issue, and he had other things going on because he was so extreme about everything.
Which is weird because there's another very famous runner that kind of resembles that, who died at a young age, and it seems like as endurance athletes, I don't know. I mean, not everyone, but that seems like kind of a trend. Those really aggressive, go get it athletes also kind of have that in the personal life also.
Well, they open themselves up to addiction, and the reason that they do that is because they have this extreme need for this whether it's adventure, it's pain, it's something, right? They need this extreme thing, and that's why they excel at running, because it's an extreme thing. And so there's tons and tons of stories out there where people were alcoholics, and the way they got over their alcoholism was to become a runner. So they could focus instead of focusing on being extreme in alcohol, they have this extreme focus in running. It happens all the time, and these brain hacks and the way your brain works is it's just the way it works. So Sammy Wanjiru, interesting story, tragic story at the same time, but certainly one worth checking out. So go check that out. In the meantime, also check out J Radio. We're sponsored by J Radio, which is the world's greatest digital music platform. Go out there and check out J Radio.
If your teen is into rock and metal music that makes your ears bleed and your grandmother clutch her pearls, we can help. If your spouse yearns for music from the old days and wants to relive the music of their glory years, we can handle that. If you need a break from the day to spend time with God and recognize His goodness, we'd love to be a part of that. Whether it's rock and metal, classic songs from decades past, or heartfelt worship music, J Radio has you covered. Sign up for an account at jradio.com and download the app in your app store to start listening for free today.
All right, I'm back here with Lane Hollis. And don't forget that you can send messages to dean@runforgod.com if you have questions and some things that we can help you about. You can send messages to dean@runforgod.com, and I can try to help you with that. If you are a Run Club member especially, take advantage of that. If you haven't shared your story yet, we want you to share your story too, because we love to share stories. We're about to share somebody's story. We want to hear yours. So tell us what your story is. You can go to runforgod.com and you can put your story in there, and we will be, if you're a Run Club member, you go right to the head of the line. We share your story next. So share your story. Now, you may be able to share your story live. You might be able to be in the studio just like Lane is right now, and we might be able to talk about your story live. That would be so much fun. If you can get here and you write a story, we can do that. So reach out to us, and we'll be glad to make you a part of the Run for God podcast. So, are you worried about being faster? That's not necessarily a bad thing, is it? If you're not worried about that. Some people, Lane and I, we're obsessed with being as fast as we can be, right? That's what we want to do, right? But that's not the goal for everybody. And that's okay that it's not the same goal for everybody, because maybe God has other plans. So we're going to talk about this one, this story from Donna Sumrall. She's from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. It's called I'll Never Be Fast. I have come to the realization that I will never be fast. I used to be at least sort of fast, but as my years have advanced, my speed has diminished. With that in mind, it would be easy to see how I would get discouraged and just give up. But then things like this happen to remind me why. Tonight, I participated in a local Go Hard, which is Hug a Runner Day, I love that, event. It was only a mile run and totally for fun, but just what I needed as I start to work on getting back into running again. I started out with the other runners as they started into an easy jog. The best part was watching all the parents with their kids as they made their way around the course. Before long, I found myself running alone. I've noticed that happens a lot. There are a bunch of runners ahead of me and a few behind me, and I run alone. That's okay. To be honest, I'm kind of comfortable in that spot. I actually like running alone. It was then that I came up behind two little girls who had sped past me earlier, but now were walking. I encouraged them a couple of times to keep going. They would, of course, take off at top speed and leave me, only to have me plod back up behind them in a few seconds. Finally, I ran alongside the smallest one. I'll call her Pink Kitty since she wore a pink kitten hat. And at this time, I told her I'd run alongside her. She started to kick on the jets again, only this time I told her to slow down. We'd just go slow. She was doing her best, but she looked up at me and said, "My heart hurts. It feels like it's breaking." I nodded and said, "I know, but that's just your heart growing stronger. Don't stop. Don't give up. You can do this." We ran along side by side, me talking to her about her really cool hat, asking about her school, telling her she was doing great, encouraging her that she was a really fast runner for a 5-year-old. "I don't think I could have run that fast when I was 5, I said. She looked up at me and said, "How old are you?" "I'm 54. Pretty old, huh?" She nodded. Yes, she nodded. Funny, at that moment, it felt pretty good to be that old. Step by step, we ran together. "Not much further," I said. The finish line was getting closer, and she wanted to speed up, but I told her to hold back until the final turn. As we approached that last turn, I told her I wanted her to run as hard as she could. I figured she'd leave me behind when she kicked in those afterburners, but we weren't done. She gave it a burst of speed, but then I could see her slowing. I had to speed up and run beside her, egging her on. That little pink kitty crossed the finish line at full speed, so proud of herself and what she had done. She finished her mile run. I have to be honest, I was pretty happy too. No, I hadn't run my fastest mile, far from it. Instead, I had helped someone else reach her goal. The Christian walk is a lot like this run. Sometimes I feel my best days are behind me. I'm not nearly as fast as I once was. Only now, I have an even better reason to run. I get to run alongside others who are just starting their race, those whose hearts feel like they are breaking, and I get to encourage them that they are just getting stronger. I get to talk to them a little about little things to help get their minds off the pain. I get to remind them to slow down. We'll get there one step at a time. I get to watch them do things they never thought possible and help them simply not to quit. No, I'll never be fast like some others, but this is my race, the one that allows me to meet people along the way that simply need to hear, you can do this. This is why I run this race called life. You care to join me? Of course, at Run for God, we say that all the time. Speed's not important. It depends on your goals. We all have different goals, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Your goal is to be fast.
It is.
How fast do you want to be?
Yes. I want to be decently quick. No, I would love to be very fast, faster than I am.
All right.
But yeah.
And you will be.
Yeah. Yeah, but I understand what they're saying. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is pace people. I love pacing people.
Yeah.
And so I guess that can go along with this story about helping others.
Yeah, you've done it for me a couple of times.
I have. That was that one time where I paced Dean to his unbelievable breaking the state record by almost a minute was one of my favorite races.
It was enjoyable for me too. It hurt like crazy, but it was enjoyable. It was fun. I remember though, if you remember during that race, I remember we were like a quarter mile from the finish line, and there was the guy that was leading the race wasn't far ahead of us, and I knew you weren't putting everything you had into it, and I'm like, I said, go win, and you thought I said something about
there was a headwind, and I thought Dean was telling me to block the wind, and so I got in front of him to break the wind. But I don't think I would have tried to go for it anyways. It was pretty fun.
That was fun. That was a fun day. Yeah, I remember I wrote a story a few years ago about a time too when I did this kind of the same thing. I was in a race and I was just trying to run. It was like the week before a marathon, and thought I was running a half marathon. I don't remember why I was running this race in particular, but I was running it at marathon pace. So I was running it slower than what I would normally run a half marathon. And there was a guy running alongside of me, and he was kind of starting to fall back. And so I started to encourage him because I wasn't, digging real deep. And so I started to encourage him, and he just kept going. He kept going, and he wound up finishing well. And as we got toward the finish line, about, a couple hundred yards away from the finish line, I said, okay, go, take off. And I just kind of backed off and let him finish well. And he wound up finishing third overall in the race. And he won a cash prize that went 3 deep. And
Really?
So I was fourth. And so I didn't win the cash prize. And, my first thought was, man, that's such a shame that I could have won that cash prize.
Yeah.
But my next thought was, man, that was awesome to get a chance to help that guy do that. And he won that cash prize.
Yeah.
So how much cooler was that? I got something way better than money out of that, right?
Yeah.
So, I remember that. Scripture reference, 1 Thessalonians 5:11. Therefore, comfort each other and edify one another, just as you also are doing. That's verse 11, but verse 1 through 11 is interesting. I think that section's called the Day of the Lord, and so I kind of wanted to read that whole thing about the times. About the times and the seasons, brothers, you do not need anything to be written to you, for you yourselves know very well that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. When they say peace and security, then sudden destruction comes on them, like labor pains come on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. But you, brothers, are not in the dark, for this day to overtake you like a thief. For you are all sons of light and sons of the day. We do not belong in the night or in the darkness. So then we must not sleep like the rest, but we must stay awake and be serious. For those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who get drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, we must be serious and put on the armor of faith and love on our chests, and put on a helmet of hope and salvation. For God did not appoint us to wrath, but to obtain salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us, so that whether we are awake or asleep, we will all live together with him. Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up, as you are already doing. I read all that because it's important to understand what we're being told to encourage each other about. Yes, we need to encourage each other when it comes to running and other things and activities and in general life. But what he's talking about here is this great hope that we have in Christ, right? Don't forget who we are, is what he's saying. We have this great future. We have this great thing that's going to happen, and we need to continuously remind each other of that, right? Building each other up is just one of those things that we're called to do. The people on the Facebook page, the Run Club Facebook page, they do a really, really good job of that, right?
Yeah.
And how often do you're in a race and you feel terrible, and then you run by somebody calls your name. Makes you feel better, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it immediately
it does.
picks you up.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Hebrews 10:22-25. Let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembly of ourselves together, as is the manner for some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. We're supposed to be together building each other up, right?
Yes.
So don't you love part of the fun, I'm sure, for you now? Last year you were running at the high school, and you ran a lot of runs by yourself.
I did.
Because you had to.
Yeah. Because
there was nobody to run the pace that you needed to run. This year you're running a lot of runs with other guys, right?
Yes.
There's some enjoyment in that, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, and there's enjoyment because you get to talk and whatever, but there's also just like a exiting of the mind, I guess. You don't have to consciously push your body to run, especially if you're not feeling it. Because if you're not feeling well, or you like don't want to run, then it's pretty difficult to run by yourself. It's a constant push. But being together and building people up helps in every aspect of life.
Yeah. Yeah, I like this phrase in this verse. It says, let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works. Normally when we think of that word, when we think of stirring things up, we think of bad things.
Yeah.
But this is a good stir. Right?
Yeah.
It's a neat picture of how we're to encourage one another. And then sometimes encouragement comes in ways that are more negative, right? But they're somebody recently sent me an email trying to encourage me, and the email was about something that I wasn't doing. That if I did, it would be good. If I did this thing, well, that's a negative thing, right? To call somebody out for not doing something.
Yeah.
But it was positively received, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't, the overriding sentiment was, if we can do this, it'll be better, right?
Yeah.
So it was sent in a good way, and so I think sometimes we neglect that. The idea of building each other up is in telling us we can do it, but it's also in saying, not allowing excuses, not allowing us to slack off or whatever that case may be, right?
Yeah. And I feel like some people may read into that and think it's negative. Like some people may look at it and say, well, that person's rude or mean, but a lot of times if it's someone you're close to, it's simply just a reminder or constructive, criticism. But yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah. We don't like correction, but we sometimes really need it.
Yeah.
Question: who can you encourage today? Well, let me ask this: do we need to purposefully look for people to encourage? Do you think we need to go out and purposefully look for people to encourage, or do we just need to encourage the ones that are in front of us?
I think we need to go out and look for people. I think that's important, because if you do a very good job with the people around you, you may run out of people.
Yeah. Do you think we could miss somebody that's right in front of us if we're looking out here?
Yeah. I think that's possible. I think that's why it's important to maybe the people around you, maybe more so, but at some point you do need to go out, because the people around you is only a certain amount of people, whereas, we're called to go out into the world. And
it's true. I think a lot of times God brings you the ones too that need encouragement. They just show up, right?
Yeah.
They're right there, and you realize, oh, they were put there for a reason.
Yeah.
Right? I know. I watch Debbie whenever we go. If we're let's say we're going through the store and we're in line and we get to the checkout area and that clerk is extra friendly. Well, Debbie's going to tell that clerk, "You're doing a great job. I appreciate your smile," or something like that, because that's an important thing, and people need to hear that. People need to be encouraged by that. And I'm telling you, you know how that works.
Yeah.
Somebody tells you that, and it's going to make you work that much harder and that much better, right? So I like to do that too. I like to encourage folks. And I heard somebody one time give an example. They're talking about how when you go to a restaurant, if you want good service, he says, here's what he does if he wants good service. He'll bring that waiter or waitress over initially and say, okay, I want to tell you this. I want to give you a really good tip today. And I know you're going to do a great job and you're going to earn a really good tip today. So thank you ahead of time for doing such a great job today. And he said, inevitably, that person would smile, and of course, they would do a great job because they would think, oh, he's probably going to leave me a big tip. Yeah. And of course, he would, because he kind of announced it up front and kind of made a promise. Yeah. But he also got fantastic service when he did that. But that's just encouraging somebody ahead of time, right?
Yeah, it is.
That's really all that is. Yeah, and then the other thing that you do that is completely missed oftentimes is if I'm in line with Debbie, she's encouraging that clerk. Well, I see that too. And that's encouraging to me just to see somebody else being encouraged. And so encouragement is really infectious.
Yeah, it is.
I really think it is. Yeah. So if you know somebody who needs encouragement today, maybe you need to make a phone call. Maybe there's somebody who God has put on your heart right now to encourage. Next question. As you run this race of life, what things discourage you? Busyness. Just so much to do, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes people, and sometimes things come up right out of the blue. Like sometimes somebody will call you and say, hey, could you go do a podcast?
Yeah.
Right in the middle of the day? Yeah. That makes life hard, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it's easy to get discouraged by those things, but it can also be an encouraging thing to get through those things too. The things that discourage us, I think. Sometimes you work real hard to get a lot of things done. You're working your tail off. You got all these things going on, and you think, I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna put my legs up for a minute, and then as you drive into the driveway, you realize I gotta cut the grass. I don't have time for that. Yeah, and it's like it's exasperating sometimes because you get so busy. But you can look at those things differently, because I can look at that opportunity, the need to cut the grass is, oh gosh, I got to go cut the grass. Or I can say, you know what? While I'm cutting the grass, I can put my headphones on and I can listen to a podcast that I want to listen to. Yeah. That's a positive way to look at something negative, right? Yeah. So there's a way to take your busyness and make it more positive. And another thing that I think is really discouraging to people, and we know this from a scientific standpoint, social media. Some studies have come out recently that said that how destructive Instagram is to girls in particular. Yeah. That's sad. And why is it? Because we're constantly comparing ourselves. Yeah. Why is it so hard why can't we stop comparing ourselves to others?
I don't know. It's a very good question, and yeah, I think it's interesting that yeah, I just think the whole thing is interesting with Instagram and Facebook and how much it does affect, especially younger kids nowadays with comparing and stuff like that. But yeah,
Yeah, and for a lot of people like exercise. Like if you're a runner, a lot of times you look online and you see somebody else running really well,
yeah,
and you could look online and go, "Why can't I be Joshua Cheptegei?"
yeah, yeah,
you know?
yeah. That actually reminds me of what it's not Instagram, but there's a thing here in I don't know if it's just in Georgia, Mile Split.
Yeah,
I guess that's a
it's all
national
over the
thing.
country. Yeah,
It's just it's just a website that has all the high school cross country times. Basically, anybody who runs for some sort of school, they're on Mile Split. And my friend, Dean knows the friend. My friend would, before every single race, he would be. I mean, like you think some people compare on Instagram. This guy would psych himself out so much on Mile Split just from comparing people.
yeah.
And so, but yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thought too, right? Because a lot of times when we think about comparison, we think about Instagram, we think about girls comparing themselves to what other girls look like a lot of times, but it goes way deeper than that. A lot of times it's because somebody else has a thing. You know, they've got this special thing that costs a lot of money, and we're jealous of that thing, and so that causes us problems. But lots of time, lots of different things. But that's why our Facebook group is so good for each other, because none of them are judgmental. They don't seem to be comparing themselves to other. When somebody does do it, everybody calls them out.
Yeah.
And says, "Hey, cut that out.
Yeah.
You're somebody." So that's important. I just had a conversation with a lady yesterday she's gone through some really, really tough things this year. I mean, very legit, really life-changing, hard things she's been through this year. And I was trying to encourage her, and this is another one of those ways you encourage somebody in a negative way. So I said to her, because she was telling me about those things, and I was saying, sometimes you just got to look on the positive side of things, even when things are bad. And I said, like my son, and I went over and talked about Daniel, who now can't walk. All of a sudden, he's 42 years old and he can't walk.
Yeah. And
we're not even sure what happened exactly to cause it, and how his whole life just changed suddenly. And, she looked at me and she goes, "Man, I'm going to quit complaining." Because she compared herself to somebody who was in a more negative situation than herself, and thought, wow, I'm really kind of fortunate to be where I am.
Yeah.
And there's always somebody out there. There's always a way worse situation, and there's always a reason to be thankful for what we do have.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Like there's always, for most people, for the vast majority of people, in any situation, there is almost always a worse situation.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's almost, in every case scenario, something to compare to that's worse, that can flip your mindset about whatever you're going through.
Yeah, for sure. I watch Debbie, my wife, I watch her. She has to do extra things every single day for her breathing and for her lungs every day. And then in the meantime, I'm going out and hammering my lungs by running for an hour every day, right? And it seems so unfair.
Yeah, and then we complain about how bad we felt on the run. Like I just don't, don't understand what happened on that run. But in reality, does it even matter?
Yeah, I've been sick for the last week, right? And so for the last week, I catch myself. I'll say this. I'll say something like, "Man, I'm having a hard time breathing," and then I'll look over at Debbie and I'll go, "You don't know what that's like, do you?" It's kind of a running joke between us. And but the truth is she's so encouraging to me to watch her go through all of that and still be positive. Yeah. And so you can have a big impact on others around you when you do take those things that are hard and realize what a positive situation you have rather than negative. Another question: what do you share with others that gives you the greatest joy? For me, it's pretty obvious. I just love sharing running stuff, whether it's a story about running or it's just facts or it's trying to help somebody through a tough situation, or I love to see people do well,
Yeah.
We've had those times where, you've had a realization as an athlete and things just came together and it worked really well. And it's just, those are the things I love to see, the things that you feel like you had a part in, at least. I got an email recently from somebody, they were struggling with something. And I sent her back a reply. And after I sent it, I thought, I wondered if I should have sent that, because it was kind of in your face, kind of a, I think you just got to try harder. Basically, is almost what I was saying.
Yeah.
And I didn't say it in that way, but in a more positive way. But it was like, I thought, should I have sent it? After I sent it. Well, the next day I got a reply back from her. And it was a great reply. She went out and did exactly what I said I thought she should do. Turned out great. Those are the things that I love and the things that I live for. Are those times when you challenge somebody and then it turns out great.
Yeah.
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 That's awesome. Of course, if you've ever been a part of helping somebody come to Christ at all, there's nothing in the world that can take the place of that. Nothing. I remember my youngest son, I shared with him for over a year of what it meant to be saved. And there was this feeling that he didn't quite understand it. And these conversations went back and forth. And he was a really, really smart kid, but he didn't quite grasp it. And so all I could do during that year was just kind of be encouraging, explain it to him, and then eventually he got it. And of course he was saved on my front porch of my house.
Really?
Yep. And it was, it took some encouragement along the way.
Yeah.
But in the end, I wouldn't save that 3 minutes of prayer on my front porch for anything in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
While you are working hard to keep your body in shape physically, the music you listen to while you run can help keep you in shape spiritually. We have partnered with J Radio to put together a group of running playlists by Mitchell, Lane, Holly, me, and others that you hear on the Run Club podcast. Plus, you can listen to a playlist put together by members of Run Club just like you. Check out the whole station of Run for God playlists now at jradio.com and in the J Radio app. All right, I'm back with Lane Hollis. Did you see the Boston Marathon?
I did not. I knew it was coming up, but it was one of those things where it just completely was not in my head. But no, I did not see it.
Man, did you see anything about it afterwards? No?
Not really.
C.J. Albertson. Do you know that name?
I've heard Albertson.
Have you?
I don't know that first name, though.
Well, C.J. went out crazy hard, and halfway through the race, he was leading by over 2 minutes in the Boston Marathon. It's probably the biggest lead anybody's ever had for the first half of any world major.
Yeah.
Since the world majors became what they call the world majors.
Yeah.
It was crazy. He just went out and just hammered it from the beginning. And it was his birthday that day.
Really?
And when he first went out, I thought, what's he doing? What is he doing? But he just kept on going, and he kept on going. And it's like, well, the leaders finally passed him at like 20 miles. It took them until like 20 miles to finally catch him. And it was just, man, it took some guts for him to do that. It was pretty cool to watch.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go watch it now. I had no clue that happened.
Well, and then in the end, he winds up finishing in the top 10, too. It's like you would think at that point in time, okay, he's dead. He's done.
Yeah.
But he fought back and still finished. I think he finished in like 2:11. Something
really?
Like that. Yeah, it was crazy. It was really, really cool to watch. It took some gut, but it had to hurt. You know that had to hurt.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. I can't imagine. But it kind of reminded me of, we watch cycling races. You love the Tour de France and watching those guys. watching somebody do a breakaway
Yeah.
and see if they could get away with it.
Yeah, those are pretty exciting. I feel like it's a little bit more common in cycling. I mean, pretty much every single stage of the tour, there is a break.
Yeah.
An hour into the race. Every stage of the tour is pretty much a 5.5 hour race.
Yeah.
Every day for 21 days. And there's always a group of people that is just out there, just taking the gamble every day.
Yep.
And maybe there'll be 2 or 3 times in the 3 weeks where it'll last. But yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often in running, but every once in a while somebody does get away with it, and so it was pretty cool. One of the other cool things that happened in this race was, who Shalane Flanagan is, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Shalane is running all the World Marathon Majors, right?
I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So she ran the Chicago Marathon on Sunday, and then ran the Boston Marathon on Monday.
Really? Do you know what her time ended up being in the Boston Marathon?
I do. She ran 2:39 at Boston and 2:40 at Boston, 2:39 in Chicago. That's
crazy.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That is pretty darn good. And she had already run, what was it, the London Marathon like a week or two before that, and she ran it like 2:35. So
oh my goodness, that is crazy.
She's over 40 years old now.
Yeah,
and she's
not really running professionally right now, is she? She's retired.
No, but I've seen some places where she'll get in workouts with some of the professional runners because she helps coach them.
Yeah,
and she gets in there and does some of the workouts with them, so she stays really, really fit.
Yeah,
but she's not in top-notch shape, and she's still doing that. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool to watch. All right, it's time for Dean's Thoughts. That's a time when I share something that I've written about the intersection between running and faith. Do you like tests?
No.
No tests. What about trivia contests? You like those?
Not a huge
Are you
fan.
not a trivia guy?
No.
Man. All right. So let's a lot of people are no test, but I like trivia. So we're going to go over this story called This Is Not a Test. Do you like to take tests? The answer to that question probably depends on the context of the situation. For example, most people don't like the idea of taking a test for school, yet most people like trivia questions. The test in school makes us anxious and we worry about our performance, but the trivia questions are usually done for fun, so we enjoy the experience. Who among us does not get a little nervous anytime we must answer questions when there are consequences for our responses? Many of us take online courses for our job or perhaps to continue a certification. In most cases, we know all the material, but we can't help but worry as soon as we see the questions pop up. What if they're trick questions? What if I missed something in the video? After all, my mind did wander a bit while I was watching it. What do they need to test me on things they know I know? This just seems like a total waste of my time. In general, we just dislike testing for knowledge. On the other hand, most of us love trivia questions. I've watched many cross-country teams play trivia games on the bus on the way home just for fun. When you go out to eat and there's a device on your table for answering trivia questions, we all want to jump in, don't we? At a minimum, we watch the screens and answer the trivia questions as they come up. And we all know who Alex Trebek was for a reason. But isn't trivia just a test? Yes, that's exactly what it is. So maybe we don't dislike testing for knowledge. It's all about the stakes, isn't it? On the one hand, we feel pressure to make the grade when we know it means something. On the other hand, we're just having fun and there are no consequences for an incorrect answer. The difference isn't quite as stark as our brain makes us feel, but there is a difference for sure. I submit to you that many people go into race day thinking the result is much like the classroom test. They put pressure on themselves to perform, and that pressure makes the day less satisfying, doesn't it? We love it when the test is over, so all we think about is getting the race over with, right? Isn't that the way you're thinking about race day? Maybe the answer to more satisfying races is thinking about your race differently. Perhaps you should look at your race less as a test and more as a game. What if you were to begin looking at a race like trivia night instead of test day? It could change your experience entirely. Race day is meant to be the fun part of our running. Look at it that way and watch the anxiety melt away. Maybe we should look at all our challenges differently. James says to consider it a great joy when we experience trials. He goes on to say that those trials produce endurance. That endurance allows us to mature in our faith and gets us to a point where we are, as James said, complete, lacking nothing. If testing our faith helps us, then doesn't it make sense that if we change the way we approach a race, we can enjoy them more because it is an opportunity to test our fitness? Look at them more like a game than a test. It's time we start approaching them that way. What do you think about that?
I'm gonna have to go back on what I said. Yeah, this is the first time I've seen any of this. You have to remember. So I will go back and say that yes, trivia, gamifying, no stakes questions, they are a lot more fun than tests, and I understand completely what this is saying, because some of my best, I don't want to say some of my best performances have been no stakes, but some of I feel like when there's high stakes, there's no room for in between, and that's what's very stressful. You either are on top of the mountain, you do amazing, or you just bomb and it's awful.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, some of my best, most comfortable, enjoyable performances have been when there's no stakes and you're just going out. And
you ever have one of those days when the stakes are high and it is an important race, but you still have that calm, confident feeling?
Yes.
And isn't that an amazing
It
day?
is. Yeah. It's great. It's, I guess, one of the most important times it happened was, and there's some other circumstances that go into this because there was other factors, but my first college cross-country race, I had approximately 0 nerves at all. And there were some other factors, but I just feel like with triathlons, there's like 6 big ones a year, and you have to just kill those. And that's what I've known for like the past long time. So anything other than that just feels great. It just feels like there's not pressure. And I think perception can go into how much stakes there is. Like if one thing is high stakes, but you go off and you do something else that is even bigger and better, once you come back to that, it's like, oh, this is not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have had those times where it's like a big race, and you're like, this just doesn't feel as nerve-wracking as it should.
Yeah. That's good when it feels that way, though. You know, I think that's part of the reason why I'm a runner, is because for whatever reason, I can focus myself as a runner properly in a race situation, in a high-pressure situation. From a running standpoint, I usually produce fairly well when the pressure is on. And somehow or another, I'm able to relax and do that. But when it comes to other sports, I remember playing basketball when I was a kid. I couldn't shoot a free throw. Now, if it was not game time, I could shoot free throws all day long.
Yeah.
You put me in a game, and the adrenaline of holding the ball in my hands and knowing the game was on the line or whatever, I couldn't hit a free throw.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just kind of it's an anxiety thing that you get. And,
yeah, it is.
It was really, really hard for me, but when it's come to running, it's always been when the gun goes off, all the nerves go away and everything goes back to I feel good and everything works out.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting talking point. Is just nerves and anxiety associated with race, because everybody's different. I used to be bad with pre-race anxiety, especially when I was 13, 14, 15 years old. I feel like I've gotten better at it now, a lot better since I was, that young. But yeah, it's crazy. Sometimes even I would get nervous during the race if I was doing good. It's a very weird, very weird how it would happen, but I would be in the race, halfway through the race, and if I was doing good, I would get nervous because like I gotta hang on to this. I gotta hang on. But yeah.
Or worried maybe about something's going to go south any minute now.
Yeah.
This is all going to go away. Right?
Yeah, because you still, I mean, halfway through, you still got 30 minutes left. And you're like, oh my goodness, I feel so good, but anything could happen.
I remember that when I ran that half marathon we were talking about a little while ago, that Myrtle Beach Marathon. I ran that race and I had arm warmers on, and because it was really chilly at the start. And I remember running. My goal was to run I was going to run at 6:15 pace. That was my goal, and so I did that for the first 10K. And then in the 7th mile, I accidentally ran like 6 minutes. And I thought, I didn't need to do that. And then the 8th mile was right around 6 minutes. And then it was like all of a sudden, all that felt comfortable to me. And I thought, all right, I'm gonna settle into this, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to handle this.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I took my arm warmers off, and I was busy searching for Debbie on the sideline because she was supposed to be there. Well, I never saw her. I just looked for her the whole time. And I realized after looking for her up until about 14, 15 miles that I thought, the last few miles have gone by, I haven't even really paid attention to it. Everything's gone so well that it hasn't even dawned on me the pace I'm running.
Yeah.
And I just kept going. And then I thought, well, all right, you've been running too fast. It's all going to catch up. And then it didn't.
Yeah.
And then I got another mile in, and it still didn't catch me. And then I got another mile in, and it still didn't. And I'm like, it's got to hit me sooner or later.
Yeah.
And then it never did. And
Yeah.
I wound up running the last mile was my fastest mile.
Really?
Yeah. So sometimes it just works that way.
Yeah.
But you got to be relaxed enough to let that happen too.
Yeah.
I kept thinking it was coming, but it wasn't an anxious thought.
Yeah.
It was more of a, all right, I'll be ready for it when it gets here.
Yeah.
But then it was a surprise that it never got there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Consider it all joy. This concept of looking at a race like it's a trivia contest rather than a test, don't you think that's a great thought?
Yeah.
I don't know why that came to me, but it did, and I thought, that's the difference. Because a test and a trivia contest, they're the same thing.
Yeah, it really is. There's these, of course, I'm sure like the kids would know, but there's these things that they use in school, like Kahoot is one of them. There's these websites that it's like they gamify questions.
Yeah.
And, teachers will play Kahoots in the classroom, and it's a quiz, but it's actually pretty fun to play. And it's weird how your brain just doesn't it separates the two, trivia and test, but in reality it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. From a college standpoint, for me, I remember I was not a very good student. My first couple of years at college were abysmal. And but all I did to change that was to change the way I looked at college. It was like I went from, this is something I have to do and I have to slog through and get through, to, hey, this is pretty cool. I'm going to earn a degree here if I can get my.
Yeah.
And you know what? Some of this stuff is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And once I realized this wasn't just something to memorize, but it was interesting and could be useful to me, it all changed. And I became one of the best students at that point in time because I changed my mind.
Yeah, I think that's really important. One side note about that is that actually happened. I mean, when you're in high school, you've been through 9 years minimum of school. And in school in America is school. I mean, it's school. Nobody likes school. And so when I was a 11th, 12th grader, I was in this history class, and I kind of took a step back. I was like, this is I watched a video one day. I was on YouTube, and I watched a video one day, and I was like, this is a very interesting video. I'm really into this. I'm learning something. It was something about history. I was like, this is interesting. I like this. And then I realized I'm learning this in school. And so it took me back, and you just have to take a step back, and sometimes this stuff is actually interesting.
Yeah.
If you can get away from the school part. But
it's all in your frame of reference, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you've ever participated in any sport, you've probably met a great coach. Great coaches inspire us to do more than we ever thought possible. You can be the leader that helps others achieve things they never thought possible. You, yes, you have the ability and the opportunity to be that person. All you need is a heart to help people and the ability to follow a plan. The Run for God 5K Challenge will come ready to help you inspire those around you. The step-by-step guide will direct you how to plan, pray, and train people both physically and spiritually. You can help them become more fit in their health and in their walk with Christ. Share your passion. Go to runforgod.com to find out how to inspire others to accomplish big things.
All right, we're back again with Lane Hollis, and they have a new study about the super shoes.
Really?
Are you interested in hearing what it said?
Very interested.
Yeah.
I'm surprised I haven't heard about it.
Well, here's what it said. It said basically Nike and ASICS are way ahead of everybody else. That those two shoes are clearly, performance-wise, better than anybody else. And that there are a couple that are definitely performance-enhancing, that definitely help. Like, I think Saucony. They didn't test Adidas, first of all. That's important to note because they weren't available or something at the time. But Saucony and New Balance, I think, said they were helpful, but not as good. And then the others, they said, no different.
Really?
Yes. And they said that what they found was when you took the Nike and you took the carbon plate out of it, and you took, let's say, one of these other shoes and you took the carbon plate out of it, no difference. In other words, the complete difference between the Nike shoe and the ASICS shoe from, let's say, the Brooks shoe, which I think they decided wasn't, and I don't want to slander Brooks, but that's just the study.
Yeah.
They said that if you took the carbon, the entire difference is based on the foam and not the carbon plate.
Really? I mean, I think it's easy to believe because then I haven't tried any of the other shoes, but that Nike foam is pretty impressive. But that is interesting. There's no difference, like the Brooks, for example, doesn't make a difference.
Well, I'm not saying that I think the carbon plate helps, but it doesn't. The amount, the little bit that it does help, isn't any different. In other words, the Nike shoes without the plates would still be very helpful.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and here, this is also an interesting thing that I learned in researching this a little bit further was that the Nike foam and the Saucony foam is the same foam.
Really?
It's made out of the same thing, but they're obviously compounded just a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And Nike has gotten it more right
than
Saucony has.
Yeah. I was about to say, because that Nike foam is obviously a little bit more, that Saucony foam is a little bit more firm.
Yeah.
Than the Nike foam. Your Nike foam is very squishy and responsive.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, interesting thoughts on the super shoes. So I don't know. I wear the Sauconys. I'm convinced they help me. I don't care about any of the others at this point in time because I know they help, and that's all I care about.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Trivia question for this week. Who is the person who has the most sub 4-minute miles? Do you have any idea who it is? Don't say it.
I don't have an idea who it is, but I feel like it's someone that you would never guess. I don't feel like it's a world-renowned, world record holder.
He is a world-renowned runner.
Oh, really?
But he may have been world-renowned a while ago. So, yeah. And here's the other question to go along with it. This is to make it more interesting. The guy who does have the most sub 4-minute miles also was instrumental in inventing a new sport.
Really?
That now is not really around anymore. But it was very interesting at the time, and he made it very interesting. And so what was that sport as well? So now you're intrigued, aren't you?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I am.
All right. Every week we share a reason why running is so awesome. And we're going to share this week The reason why running is so awesome is this. Audiobooks.
Yes.
Running is awesome for listening to audiobooks, right?
It is.
It's a great time to listen. Actually, a wide variety of things. There's other things you can listen to too, but it's a great time for that. Sometimes we have a hard time finding time for things like that.
Yeah.
If you're a person who feels like you're so busy you don't have time to sit down and read, well, audiobooks are a great way to catch up and it's not as, I don't think it's as good as reading, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Or if you just don't like reading, I'm not talking about myself, but if you just don't like reading, but yeah.
Yeah, there's no way that I could get all the information that I get without running, because I listen to some podcasts and some other things, and a lot of what I listen to, I get while I'm running.
Yeah.
And so I'm a more informed person.
Yeah.
Because I'm a runner.
Yeah.
Motivational thought of the week comes from Thomas Jefferson. Nothing can stop the man with the right mental attitude from achieving his goal. Nothing on earth can help the man with the wrong attitude. Isn't that so true?
Yeah, it is.
Attitude, the attitude with which we do things means everything, for sure.
Yeah.
Obviously, having a positive attitude means a lot.
Yeah.
We've all seen that guy who just can't ever be positive about anything.
Yeah.
And he's suffering all the time. He's always unhappy.
Yeah. And the only person who can fix that is himself.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Yeah.
Yep. No matter how many times you say it.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. All right, everybody. You're doing great. Keep up the great work. And keep watching for Lane on the cross country course. You're going to be what's your next race?
It is tomorrow, actually.
All right.
We're going to be in, I think it's
Cookeville, Tennessee.
At Tennessee Tech.
All right.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, good luck on that race. Hope that goes well.
Thank you.
By the time this comes out, we will know.
Yeah.
If you did well or not. So,
yes, we will.
Are you optimistic?
I am optimistic.
All right.
It's actually technically my first college race.
Right. So, going to be awesome. All right, everybody. Keep up the great work. May God bless every step of every run. Go out there and shine your light.
Good job.
For more information about the Run for God ministry, go to runforgod.com. If you have questions about your salvation, click on the Peace with God tab. There's nothing more important. Thanks for joining us today.